in a very short time frame. How do you think Donald Trump's presidency is changing the landscape politically in Canada?
Well, I mean, I think, and it's a surprise, I think we all forgot how much oxygen he takes out of the room. Um, as president, from the tariffs to they're going to be announced on day one to February 1 to who knows what happens on February 1, the dialogue and discourse and what's happening at the provincial level in terms of all the provinces. Ontario just called a snap election. And I think that's to run against Trump. And that's Harris, a conservative, essentially running on a Team Canada banner to run against Trump and then win again in the next provincial election in Ontario. So already he's had a big effect. And then I think the real question for Trump is 3 months ago, the election was, are you tired of Trudeau? And the overwhelming answer was yes. Will the ballot question be that, which it could well be, or could it be who's going to best defend Canada against Trump? If that becomes the ballot question, then that giant mountain that existed 6 months ago, that's still a hill to climb, but it maybe, just maybe, be surmountable if you have the right Liberal candidate leading the charge.
Interesting. Our last caller there talked about the flip-flop from Chrystia Freeland on the capital gains tax, the changes there. People have also changed their positions on the carbon tax. How much of that do you think we're going to see? Is this kind of real effort to separate from the policies of the Liberal Party, Liberal government over the last few years?
Yeah, I think you're going to see the Liberal candidates, certainly the mainstream Liberal candidates, they're moving the party to the right. The party has a long history of governing successfully and being competitive successfully in elections because they go with the winds. And right now, the winds are blowing to the right. And they are pitching up the tent, packing it up from Trudeau's legacy and moving it to the right. And well, Carney has talked about a different way to do carbon taxes, and Freeland's talking about this basically tax cuts for very wealthy folks. They're both moving their tent to the right because that's where they need to win. Like, they've been losing by-elections not only in the suburbs, they've been losing by-elections in the urban core. And for them to have any chance of climbing that hill, they need to appeal not just to their urban base, but they need to win back the suburbs. And I think they're going to try to move to the center right to try to appeal to those voters.
Okay. I have about 30 seconds. What does this mean for the Conservative Party?
Well, on the one hand, they have a huge head start. On the other hand, there's a new, and then we've seen this before, there's a new tectonic movement going on, and that's Trump. And their closeness to Trump is going to be a challenge that maybe they didn't expect. And if the election becomes about who can stand up to Canada, I'm sure the Conservatives will frame it as who can best negotiate with Trump, then I think that's a very different election than the one they were expecting even 3 months ago.
Daniel Reeve, always great to have you on the show. Thank you so much for your time.
Oh, always a pleasure.
Daniel Reeve, political science instructor at Camosun College in Victoria. Catherine joins us now from Bowen Island. Hi, Catherine.
Hi, how are you?
Good, thank you. What do you think of the Liberal leadership race?
Well, I was just saying to your guy on the phone that back in early 2020s, I listened to the Massey Lecture series that was given on CBC by Mark Carney. I would encourage everybody to go back and listen to that series. It was excellent. At the time, I said to my brother, why can't we have this guy as our prime minister? So my vote is for Mark Carney. I see Chrystia Freeland as a typical politician, which, quite frankly, I'm kind of tired of the typical politicians, even Polyev. So I would just like really to see Mark Carney get in there and the Liberals give the support behind him.
Catherine, thank you so much for your call. And Mohammed is next in Vancouver now. Hi, Mohammed.
Hey, how are you?
Good, thank you. Who do you think can appeal?
I'm very happy today to call CBC News BC.
Yeah.
I am Liberal Party from 2015, from different provinces in all Canada. I stay in Alberta, I go to Ontario, Halifax, and I come to BC here. I am very happy for this moment, and I think Mark is have a chance to win if he's leader of Liberal Party.
Okay, Mohammed.
Freeland, Friedland, he's have a good experience, but he's part of Justin Trudeau. Is not new face.
Mm.
The new face is Mark. Is the people who need to see something new,
Okay.
Some new idea, new work like that. Yeah.
Mohammed, really good to have you on the show. Thanks so much. That's Mohammed in Vancouver. Thanks for all your calls. You can email us bctoday@cbc.ca. Continue to watch that story, of course, for you, the Liberal leadership race. And yes, new candidates having joined the ring, thrown their name into the ring and their hat into the ring, whatever metaphor you'd like to use, as the deadline to submit nomination papers and a deposit, a refundable deposit, is coming up in just a few hours, a couple of hours from now. Much more on CBC.ca. You can go to our website and watch, of course, throughout the day on CBC and listen to CBC Radio 1. This is BC Today here on CBC. I'm Michelle Elliott. Very nice to have you with us this afternoon. And coming up, we're going to talk about the Oscar nominations that were announced just this morning. So if you're a movie fan, you're excited about this. Is there one particular film that you're excited about? Or is there something that was left off that you're kind of going, hey, what about this one? We want to hear what movie has captured your attention in the last year. We'll take your calls with Rachel Fox from the Rio Theatre coming up after this CBC News Update with Robert Zimmerman.
Good afternoon. The BC Supreme Court has certified the province's class action lawsuit against opioid manufacturers and distributors. Attorney General Nikki Sharma says the certification means BC can now proceed as a representative plaintiff on behalf of other governments in Canada. The lawsuit is aimed at recovering the costs related to the treatment of opioid-related diseases that are allegedly caused by the industry's actions. A man has been charged with second-degree murder in connection with a deadly shooting this past Sunday in Dawson Creek. 23-year-old Nolan Schmidt remains in custody. Another person was injured in the shooting and remains in hospital. The RCMP believes Schmidt and the two victims knew each other. And a documentary about abuse and missing children at a residential school in Williams Lake has been nominated for an Oscar. Sugarcane explores St. Joseph's mission and subsequent intergenerational trauma. Julian Brave Noisecat of the Cheskin First Nation is one of the film's co-directors. He and his other co-directors say they are overjoyed and filled with gratitude for the nomination. And now the forecast on the North Coast, mainly cloudy this afternoon with a high of 6. Highs around 4 with lots of sunshine in the Peace. In the central interior, including Prince George, mainly sunny with a high of 0. Highs from -7 to -3 and mainly cloudy in the Kootenays. In the southern interior, including Kelowna, periods of snow with a high of 0. And for Metro Vancouver, Greater Victoria, and the Fraser Valley, increasing cloudiness through the afternoon with highs around 4 degrees. That's your CBC News Update from Vancouver.
Thank you, Rob.
You're welcome.
That's Robert Zimmerman in the CBC Vancouver newsroom. Welcome back here with BC Today. And yesterday on the show, we asked you, would you boycott travel to the United States? Premier David Eby is calling on British Columbians to rethink travel to the U.S. in the face of threatened tariffs. And we got a lot of emails. Meg writes from Cultus Lake. Canadian snowbirds each average spending about $30,000 a year in the U.S. instead of Canada when they live there for 6 months less 1 day. With over 4 million Canadians living in the United States, that is a huge cohort that can change their behavior and keep their dollars in Canada. William from Kimberley writes, my wife and I had already canceled our planned trip to Montana the second Trump was voted into office. Over half of voters in the U.S. chose this man, knowing about his protectionist policies and other heinous points of views. We have chosen to spend our holiday dollars this year in Nova Scotia. Deb writes, Americans voted for Trump and he won the popular vote. While I don't like the language Eby used to express his boycott because narcissists only feel more powerful when people say they will fight them, I agree with the boycott. Norman writes from Prince George, I wonder if Mr. Eby has reflected at all on 2 matters. First, just which states are most likely to feel the impact from a boycott? My guess is that would be Washington, Hawaii, Oregon, and California, all blue states that rejected Trump. The second is whether Trump would care about such an impact. The answer is not at all. And Jackie calls David Eby's comments embarrassing. She writes, please, someone tell him that the president simply wants Canada to clean up the borders and do their part to prevent drugs flooding into the country. No, I won't boycott the U.S., ignore their reasonable requests, and allow the Liberals and NDP to destroy our long-standing good relationship. Thanks for your emails. BC Today at cbc.ca. You're with BC Today. I'm Michelle Elliott. Thanks for joining us, whether it's on CBC Radio 1, CBC Television, on our live stream as well. You can watch us on YouTube and on our streaming service, because everything is on a streaming service nowadays. Thanks very much for joining us there. All right. Well, calling all movie fans, because the Academy Award nominations were out today, and leading the pack are Emilia Pérez, the Spanish language musical about transgender identity, along with Wicked, the Broadway musical adaptation, and The Brutalist, which is a post-war period drama about an architect. And representing Canadians, a film investigating a BC residential school is nominated for Best Documentary Feature. The film explores residential school intergenerational trauma and resilience, and is based on events that happened in Williams Lake. Now, the two co-directors spoke earlier this week to Stephen Quinn on CBC's The Early Edition, Julian Brave Noiscat and Emily Cassie. And here's Noiscat of the Canam Lake Chickasaw First Nation on his experience and on moments in the film.
My experience was that I, grew up in a family where there were these lingering ghosts of the history of colonization that I didn't fully understand what they came from and how they impacted my father in my own life. I had chosen to learn Secwepemctsín, my indigenous language, from my kia, who attended residential school. And when you learn a language that is basically now dead from someone who had that language taken from them at these schools, you naturally ask about the schools. And when I asked those questions, I was similarly met with largely a lot of silence about that history. And so that was something that I felt really strongly that I wanted to convey through this film. And I think that the way that Em and Chris were, with our subjects as cinematographers allowed that experience to breathe and then ultimately, for those silences to speak in some instances louder than what people chose to share.
Julian Brace Noiscat, whose documentary Sugarcane is nominated for an Academy Award. Well, from Sugarcane to Wicked to Dune Part 2, what are the movies that have captured your attention this last year? We'd love to hear from you. 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. You can hit pound 690 on your cell phone, or you can email bctoday@cbc.ca. And we do have a fabulous prize, a very warm and cozy BC Today blanket, perfect for the weather, perfect for movie watching on your couch, or maybe you can bring it to a theater if you're allowed. This is going to go to one lucky caller who joins us and lets us know what movies have gotten their attention over this last year. Love to hear from you. Well, joining me now to take your calls is Rachel Fox, senior programmer at the Rio Theatre in Vancouver. Hello, welcome back, Rachel.
Hi, Michelle. Thanks for having me.
I feel a little bit embarrassed. I have not seen any of these movies.
Oh, Michelle.
I know. You can scold me now. I have been wanting to see Wicked, though, for a while.
Wicked, I was excited to go see it because I do like musicals, but I have to say, I think having seen all the movies that I have in 2024, it was hands down the most fun I had in a theater this year. I couldn't believe how much I enjoyed it. When it was over, people were standing and applauding, myself included, and me and my friends were like, what did we just see? Because it was so much fun, and the word joy is really being used a lot to describe the experience of the film, and I think it really is sort of this antidote to, the times of the moment. So I think that explains the reception people are having to it, but it was so good. And I was surprised that Ariana Grande and Cynthia Erivo actually got nominations for it, but you know what? Well deserved. And if either of them took home a trophy, I think they totally deserve it because they knocked it out of the park in that film.
I have not seen the movie Wicked. I would like to, but I feel like I've seen the movie of the friendship between these two because they have been everywhere doing all the press junkets, and they're just adorable.
Yeah.
Holding space for each other.
Yeah, I think their chemistry is undeniable, and you know, it's to me, I just think, oh, I can't wait to see the sequel now. They really did all of those things really properly, and I think, you know, I don't know. Yeah, I highly recommend it. Anyone who hasn't seen it yet.
I actually am putting it on my my weekend to-do list. I think I'm gonna spare 3 hours. Is it?
It's long, so bring a blanket. You can bring a blanket and get comfortable. No one will be mad at that.
Hey, fancy that. We do have one available. Now, a couple of the other ones that have been nominated, Emilia Pérez is leading the pack. And I saw this really kind of almost, not sweep, but do really well at the Golden Globes.
Very well, yeah. I think, you know, I was reading something from the director of that film, Jacques Audiard. This film crosses lots of boundaries. It's a musical, it's multinational, it's multilingual. There's a lot going on. It's a musical fantasy film. And something that I read that he said is that, you know, this is a year for hybrid films. And I think that really is on the nose. Like it really is great to look at the nominations and see such a variety of content, and also to see international films, not just sort of I don't know, in their own category, but you know, outside of that, like for example, the animated film Flow, which I think is Latvia's first film to be nominated for an Academy Award. Wonderful animation with no dialogue, and it has just been doing bonkers business at independent venues across North America. It's been embraced by people of all ages.
And it's done well at your theater.
It has been a little workhorse this winter season. We've been having wonderful crowds for it.
You know, I watched the trailer. It's visually stunning, and you know, I think the word joy probably also comes to mind. In fact, we have a call from Patrick in Vancouver. I'll put out the numbers again, asking you what movies have caught your attention this last year. 604-669-3733 or 1-800-825-5950. You could also just hit pound 690 and let us know what movie has been your favorite. And we do have a blanket to give away if you're up for a movie night with a blanket. Patrick in Vancouver, you want to talk about Flow.
Yeah, thanks so much for taking my call. It's so ironic that your guest mentioned that. I was just talking to your screener, and it is an amazing movie. Like you said, there's no dialogue. It's heartfelt. It's for all ages. Like, I watched it by myself. I'm 38 years old. I recommended it to my nieces and nephews who are, you know, kids, but it's so good. Like, it's such a beautiful film. I encourage everybody to watch it. It's amazing.
Wow. And why does it stay with you so much, Patrick?
I mean, I love movies. I love all types of movies. I joke around. I'm a major cinephile, and that is something that is just I don't know. It's very, you know, you get choked up. You feel like you want to cry. It hits all the emotions. You feel like you're gonna, you know, you get sad, you get happy. It's this like epic journey that this cat goes on.
Right.
You know, to do something that has no dialogue is very difficult. So when somebody can drive that home, it's amazing.
So beautifully said. And this is because the cat is having to escape a flood, right? A devastating flood. And I think that really touches people in a different way these days. You know, as I was watching the trailer, I sort of thought this is going to hit people.
Yeah, I think so. I think there's something as well, like your caller, I don't know if you saw it in a theater. I assume that you did, but there's also something too about a film that has no dialogue. So people, you know, we had so many people bring young children. Not everybody necessarily speaks the same language, but to watch something on the big screen with no dialogue and just get completely lost in the story, I think for somebody in the audience, you kind of have to work a little more to follow the story and use your brain in a different way. But I think people are really coming out of the film moved because they've had that experience. Wow. So I think it really speaks to the big screen experience as well.
Oh, wow. Patrick, so good to have you call in. Thank you so much. That's Patrick calling about Flow. I really want to see it now. Absolutely. You know, I love a poignant animated film, and this sounds like it really is up there. You know, when you watch those Japanese anime movies, there's so much emotion in them.
Absolutely. And I think also too, like with this film, it's not, you know, super Disney-fied. It's a little more refined, I think the bar is set a little differently. And I think that's also something that audiences appreciate is something a little more substantial.
People are excited about this year's selections. Sharon is calling us from Lake Country, and you're rooting for sugarcane, Sharon.
Yes, I just think it's probably the most important film that's come out this year, especially for Canada. I've been working with the Truth and Reconciliation Agreement, how to promote and move forward our 94 calls to action. And I think by promoting this movie, I haven't seen it yet, but I lived up in that area for a number of years. And in my early years, I worked for a dentist, and we did all the dental work for the St. Joseph's Mission. I was a very young woman at that time, but I always left there feeling something was not right. And it took me a long time before I started to recognize the red flags. So none of this came as a surprise. I'm just shocked how long it took us to realize. And I just think it's such a valuable story.
It is a very important story, and one that is even more so, more significant here in BC. But how do you feel about the fact it's resonating beyond BC, beyond Canada, to actually the Academy?
Well, I think we're finally, in light of everything that's going on in the world, this is a light of somebody who was brave enough and strong enough to stand up and really say we're telling the truth, and for those remarkable people who told their story. And I have nothing but the strongest admiration for Chief Willie Sellers and all of those people from that Williams Lake Band. They are doing a remarkable job in promoting this story and letting the world know it's global. It's a global story, Sharon, about our Indigenous people.
Sharon, really, really good to hear from you. Thank you very much. And I know Chief Willie Sellers was on CBC Radio this morning as well, responding to the nomination. And yes, this representation of this part of Canada's history.
I think so. And I think, another, thing to consider too, in this particular category, documentary, there's other films that actually speak to other national interests, right? Like there's Palestinian film, No Other Land has been nominated, and other stories often get a light, an international light shone on some other conflict or something of that nature in different countries. And I think it's a real testament to the filmmakers that, they're taking these stories and assembling them in such a way that have a really dynamic impact. So for me personally, one of the categories that I personally always look forward to is documentary and also international films, because I think that's where you sort of see this really broad, broad representation of filmmaking from around the world. It's the best of the year. So this is a great category as well.
Yeah. And what other Canadian representation do we have on the list? Not too much. The Canadian film that was submitted for Best International Feature Universal Language, which was is an incredible film. It's really unusual. Didn't make the cut this year, but people can still go out and enjoy it, and it's very much well worth seeing. Yes, and it's I watched that trailer as well, and it's sort of partly set in somewhere between Iran and Quebec, I think.
I think so. Yeah, I think it's actually set in Winnipeg, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, Winnipeg.
But,
okay.
Yeah, but it's all in the Farsi language, and it really sort of feels like a Persian film, but in Canada. It's quite a feat.
It just struck me that it goes so much toward your point about broadening what we see as an international film or a Canadian film. I'm joined by Rachel Fox, a senior programmer at the Rio Theatre in Vancouver, who has seen a lot of the movies that have been and haven't been nominated. I feel a little bit like the host of the Golden Globes from last year, the poor guy, Joe Coy, who said, I hadn't seen any of the movies. So I feel a little bit like that right now. So you guys can school me and let me know what movies are capturing your attention, what I should see. 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. And you can hit pound 690 on your cell phone. We have a really cozy BC Today blanket to give away to one lucky caller. Val is calling us from Vernon. Hi, Val.
Hi.
Hi. What's the movie that has stood out for you?
Hands down would be Flow.
Wow. Another vote for Flow.
It speaks in a language that I think actually all of us have, but we don't sit in silence very often and just understand, just seek to understand, seek to connect. And it does that. The animation is breathtaking, absolutely breathtaking. And it's one of those films where I couldn't predict the ending. And often, especially the Hollywood Disney stuff that comes out to us, it's so predictable. And this film inspires hope, which I think is so important. There's so much negative repetition, crisis mentality out there. And absolutely, our world is quite chaotic, and certainly we need to understand the difference between a crisis and chaos. Chaos is workable, is actually quite workable, and I would say most of us are up to the challenge. And those portrayed in flow struggle with that, show how to do that. So, yeah, you got to see this movie. It's just such a delightful piece of art.
And Val, did you see this on the big screen?
I went to our old cinema theater town here and saw it, yes. Yeah.
Nice.
On the big screen, yeah.
That's great. Like that makes me really happy to hear. Like I feel like after COVID and the actors' strike, I think there was sort of the wheel of industry of cinema sort of had some hiccups, but it's great to hear that people are back enjoying films on the big screen, maybe with their blankets, and taking them in. And it's such a visual medium. It allows your brain to shut off and really disappear into the story.
And it's such a collective experience. That's something you really miss out on if you're not going to the theater to see it.
100%. Another movie we've been playing a lot lately is The Substance, which has had an incredible 5 nominations. I think Demi Moore is probably going to win the Oscar for it. I think it's the highest grossing horror film directed by a woman, Coralie Farge, who's also been nominated for Best Director and Best Screenplay. And that is a film you could watch it at home on your television, but you will have much more of a roller coaster experience because it is bonkers.
It's gory, I heard.
It's bonkers and strange, but in the best way possible. But to see it with other people, you guys are all on the roller coaster together, and that is the way to enjoy it.
I have screamed in a movie theater, so I have no shame when it comes to that.
That's what they're there for, collective experience.
I screamed at The Sixth Sense, and everybody laughed and howled at me, but that's okay because I enjoy the experience.
Fantastic.
Val, thank you. What a great way to describe it as a piece of art. It really does look like it. And taking your calls, what is a movie that has stood out for you in this last year? I am loving the passion that people are calling with. 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. Deanna is our next caller now from 100 Mile House. Hi, Deanna.
Oh, hi. Hi, Michelle. Thanks for taking my call.
Sure thing. What's a movie that stands out for you?
I can't speak enough about Sugarcane. I want everybody that is listening to please go watch it. It's a very important documentary. It is so time. It has opened up so much for me, and just being able to see that whole the history. I actually grew up in 100 Mile House. I'm very well aware. I grew up with First Nations people from the Cannon Lake Band. Both my parents were education. They worked in the education system here. None of us were aware of what was going on at that time. We're talking back like in the 70s. We didn't know what was going. I didn't even know about residential school until later on in life. How did we miss all of this? So when Julian Braveheart brought this forward and produced this documentary, we had an opportunity to go and view it in Williams Lake this summer, myself and my mother. And I was like so blown away. That's the only thing I can say is blown away. It opened up my eyes. It's one of those things, once you've seen, you cannot unseen. Once you know, you can't unknow. This is a path not only for reconciliation for us as a people, Canadians, our First Nations people, but it's also a coming together and a healing for those people that it affected. And I heard today that it was nominated for
Documentary feature.
Yes. And I say, go all the way. Please watch it. It is right now, I believe it's right now on Disney. If you have Disney, the National Geographic. It's under National Geographic under their documentaries. I can't say enough about it. So please go out, take a view.
Deanna, you've made such a compelling case for it. And as we heard, if you're talking about the 94 calls to action and the education around the history around residential schools, this would be one to watch. So thank you very much for your call. Phaedra is next now at Salmon Arm. Hi, Phaedra.
Good afternoon. How are you today?
I am well. Thanks so much for calling in. And what movie do you want to talk about?
Emilia Pérez.
Okay. Yes.
Leading
the pack. Yeah.
It's quite the movie. It wasn't one that I wanted to see, and then I heard a lot of buzz about it, and I thought I better watch it. A huge movie buff, and it didn't disappoint.
No. What stood out for you? What's important to you about it?
Just the story, and especially with the way things are going down south right now, with the whole gay rights and transgendered and all that stuff right now, and it really hit home. It was a well done movie. And I'm glad I saw it. I watched it on the small screen. I didn't see it on the big screen. So
yeah. Phaedra, thank you very much. Emilia Pérez, leading with, I think is it 13 nominations? So that one is certainly has the buzz, and it is about a transgender experience. And so thank you very much for calling about that one. We hadn't heard from another caller about that yet. So great to have you on the show, Phaedra. Our last caller is Walter, who is actually joining us from Montreal. Hi, Walter.
Hey, I really enjoy your show. It's completely different than the other broadcasts.
Oh, okay, great. Well, thank you for calling in.
And it takes a lot to get me excited about a movie. I think I want to see Sugarcane because it sounds like a very important movie. But the movie I'm calling about today it's been nominated for 7 Oscars. I don't know if it's going to get anything anywhere, but the Bob Dylan, A Complete Unknown, is just an amazing movie. I've seen it twice.
Oh, wow.
And it's very factual. There's only a couple of little mistakes in it. Other than that, well, like one of the mistakes that I felt is that because it was the early 60s, they were drinking Budweiser in a long neck beer.
And
in those days, I'm pretty sure it was a stubby. The second thing that sort of was kind of weird was when he did the Newport Folk Festival. They had a part where he said, to the band, play it loud, whatever, and that happened in England.
Walter, you know your Dylan history and your 60s history. I'm so glad you called in. Please do call us again. Thank you to all of you for your calls on your favorite movies.
Well, thank you very much. I really enjoy your show.